Do you have a known or suspected illegitimate child on your family tree and you want to learn more about them, particularly who the daddy is? Well, today we're going to talk about some strategies to find out who's their daddy. Whenever somebody says, I wish I could research my illegitimate ancestors, I often wish, hey, I wish you had Mexican Catholics in your family tree. And the reason why is because on these Mexican Catholic church records, they will specifically define whether the child is illegitimate or not. And they will list the parents and often the grandparents, even if the father isn't married to the mother legitimately. So how are we going to go about finding the parents of an illegitimate child? Now, illegitimate child could also include a child that's abandoned somewhere. The mother, for whatever reason, couldn't take care of the child and the child is abandoned and you don't know the mother or the father. There will be some records that can help you maybe find one or the other. For the most part, I'm going to give you recommendations for finding the dad. That's the most common one asked in our channel. The first step is to have every descendant of the person who has the unknown parent, the illegitimate relationship with the parent, have that child's descendants tested. What do I mean by that? Well, I have a video on how to do descendancy research. My best advice is to look on Family Search. Go find the parent, the ancestor you're researching, and then hit the descendancy view and see what you have below. It will not show you living people, but then you can do some other research living people strategies and try to find out who the descendants are and start asking them to take a DNA test. This is also handy if you have someone you think might be the father. Go do some descendancy research, find out who their living descendants are, and then invite them to take a DNA test. Maybe they have already taken a DNA test and they can tell you where the results are, and then you can go from there. Now, if you are testing for something like this, then you'll want to test everywhere, or at least get your DNA in every database. I do have some tips on how to go about doing that so you can save your money. Be sure to check the links in the show notes, and we'll go through the blog post and the advice from there. But you do want to get every descendant that you can who's willing to take a DNA test to have their DNA in as many databases as possible. The next thing I want you to do is to build your family tree. Now, if you're adopted and you're trying to figure out your parents, then be sure to check the links in the description for the adoptee playlist. That's a little bit different strategy, but a lot of times we're researching a great-grandfather or a great-great-grandfather. I want you to build your family trees everywhere you can, especially on platforms that have DNA and a family tree building capacity. So that's going to be Ancestry, and that's going to be MyHeritage. I also want you to be utilizing 23andMe. This is a genetic-based family tree. It's not perfect. You still have to use some of the insights you get from your genealogical family tree. But this one, you're going to start putting things together, and you're going to be confident that they're related there based on DNA. And then also uploading GEDCOM's files to GEDmatch of your family tree so you can do tree comparison stuff like that. We have training videos on how to build your family tree on MyHeritage, how to upload your family tree to GEDmatch, and how to get a GEDCOM created. Look for the links in the description for all of that. So next, what you want to do is you want to become very serious and very focused on who you're researching. So I want you to create an ancestral profile. Now, I do have this template available on our website. Look in the show notes for this template. It is free. With this ancestral profile, what you're trying to do is to take your different notes about the person and put them into one place where you can see it over and over and over again. And sometimes you can see it on a family tree, but sometimes you have to just pull it out and isolate the facts as if you were a crime scene investigator. So create an ancestral profile, have all of the details or the suspected theories that you have, and get it into one location. Also do the same thing for the mother if you know who the child's mother might be. So in essence, create 2 profiles. Now, according to the terminology I'm using, illegitimacy just means not recognized as a lawful offspring. So what does that mean? Well, typically it means that they're not recognized in order to have maintenance. And it also means they may not be recognized in order to get inheritance. Now on screen, you're gonna see some words used in the English language to identify a child as illegitimate. And this can be in church records, it can be in birth certificates, it can be in newspaper articles, court records, and so forth. It can show up just about anywhere. The other terms that I have found, because I've been digging into Catholic church records for baptism, written in Spanish for New Mexico. Here are some of the words that they used in those records to designate that a child was born to a couple that was not lawfully married. I also want to include some of the Latin terminology that you may see. If there are other terms around the world, maybe Danish, Swedish, German, for records that you guys are familiar, drop those in the comments below. I think they're going to be very similar to the Latin words, but this is a place where we can learn together, so go ahead and share those ideas together. Now, I stumbled across this blog post and I found it fascinating with a number of different reasons why a child may be listed as illegitimate when the couple was actually together presenting themselves as married. Be sure to read that blog post. They have some really great strategies, so I'm going to let people who said it best get the credit. It's also important that we recognize that illegitimacy was handled differently around the world. In England, it pays to do more research, and let's settle this debate down below. Some people say the bastardy laws of 1733, when I tried to actually look for the acts from which it was based, I couldn't find anything that referenced the Bastardy Act of 1733 unless it was just in genealogy sources. Instead, they said the UK Poor Law of 1733, which talked about bastard children and what to do with them. So this is something I need to turn to the audience and ask you, because I've asked some people and the fighting is intense. But the whole point of it was that government and church leaders wanted to know the identity of the fathers to reduce the financial burden these children without a father and a mother where the child is legally recognized. They became a strain on the community. So legislation allowed for the imprisonment of the father named by the woman unless he provided financially for this child or he married the mother. And so that is a law to be aware of if you have English research ancestors. That law changed. There was a change where the woman, she could name anybody, and though she didn't have the consent of need to have the consent of the father, and then eventually it changed and she actually needed to have the consent, and the man needed to be aware when she was going to name him. So I could see why that would be some problems. Another country that dealt with illegitimate differently was in Scotland. From what I understand, there was a register of corrected entries and where people could go back and identify who the father was. So be looking for the RCE collection. And if you're familiar with that and have had success, please let us know in the comments so we can learn from somebody's actual experience in the records. That would be great. So now we're at the point of, we have our DNA tests going, we have our tree being built, and we're just kind of letting that set aside. We know who we're going to look at, and now it's time to look at documents. So what kinds of documents are available to tell us a little bit about the identity of the parents? I've already alluded to this multiple times, the church records. I love when they do say, okay, this wasn't a legitimate couple according to either our laws or the laws of the land where we live. But here are the names of the dad and the mom. Love it. We're not always so lucky. So then we need to turn to oral history, look at naming patterns. There's a lot of different strategies that we can use and resources we can consult in order to try to track these down. Some people have had varying degrees of success and some people haven't had any luck at all, but you want to turn over every possible stone you can, but you also now know what to look for. So I'm going to invite you to take these terms. They're also listed in the show notes. Take them and go to Google and type in researching court records and then fill in the location where the child was born or the mother was living at the time of the birth. And then see the instructions on how to go through that. So I don't have enough time to go through everything in this video, but at least you now have a waypoint. Oh, I didn't even think to look in workhouse records. Let me see if my area has them. Let me see if there's any notes. Sometimes a sponsor of somebody in a work house or a poorhouse, they may be related. They may be the dad. They may be the father's relative paying for the person to live there. So lots of strategies to go ahead and try to piece out. My next tip is going to ask you to research all the men in the mother's lives. Hopefully you don't have some just stranger who was a pirate, that left no records, show up out of no, did the deed, created the child, and disappeared into thin air. Often this is a situation where there was a man in the woman's life and they created life together, particularly the further back in time you go. More modern time, we're not going to talk about that. So I want you to research all the men in the lives. Don't just count family members. Incest happens. Go ahead and look at family members, look at neighbors, look at if they're a servant in the home, find out who all the men in the home were. It happened. Look at all the men in the woman's life. And then, now that you have a hit list of all the possible men in their lives, then go and research them. Do that DNA research, find out if they have living descendants, see if they've taken a DNA test, and if they have, compare their DNA results with your DNA results. The further back you go, the more people you need to test, because not everybody has the DNA from the person in question, which is why you want to capture as many people as possible. After you have created a list and you looked at your DNA and you're like, oh, should I rule them out? Should I keep them on the list? I've looked at the comparison. There's a connection. There's not a connection. Come back and ask a genetic genealogist with your case file, hey, how do I filter it down? Am I on the right path? Now, it's always a chance that it's a total stranger pirate from nowhere, but at least you have thoroughly vetted everybody in the woman's life to try to figure out who could or couldn't be. There's some other men in her life, which really means her community. I've listed them in the show notes in order to keep this video kind of short. If you made it this far in the video, I want to invite you to join our live streams. They happen every other Friday, and we have a newsletter that will send you a reminder so you don't forget which week it is. Sign up for that, join our live shows, ask your question, and participate in the fun journey of genealogy. What happens if you have men on your hit list and they don't have any trees, or you have DNA matches and you don't know if they're a descendant of this person? They won't respond to your emails. You can't solve the problem. Then it's time to keep digging deeper, keep asking questions of genetic genealogists like Andy and our colleagues, to try to piece it all together. It's all going to be dependent upon time and place that you're researching, but there are some strategies you can employ, but do the easy ones first. If you're lucky, you're going to find the document that tells you everything you need to know. If you can't find the document, and you're also fortunate, maybe you're going to have every DNA tester possibly available to piece it all together. Unfortunately, there might be the case where you're just never going to find that person, but you did your best effort. So then I invite you to tackle other genealogy research challenges. If you want to learn how to do more genetic genealogy research, which will probably help you the most in these illegitimate cases, be sure you look at the top playlist that will appear on the screen. And if you're ready for something else, be sure to check out the playlist down below. Do you have a known or suspected